morning, Wolves. Today we're going to finish up the lecture material in the tissues unit. We're going to talk about muscles, the three different kinds of muscle tissue, and we're going to talk about nervous tissue. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, today we're going to finish up the lecture material, and we're going to close it out with the last two types of tissues, and that will be muscle and nerve tissue. Muscle and nerve tissue are the last of the four basic tissue types. Neurons, which is nervous tissue or nervous cells, and muscle fibers are considered excitable cells because they exhibit electrical excitability, and that is the ability to respond to certain stimuli by producing electrical signals, such as an action potential. So your nerve cells can conduct electricity, and the muscles can receive that electrical stimulation and transfer that into a chemical signal and allow the muscles to do what they do. So since they both have that ability to exhibit electrical excitability, they are commonly grouped together. An action potential can propagate or travel along the plasma membrane, of course, the cell membrane of a neuron or muscle fiber, due to the presence of specific voltage-gated ion channels. And a voltage-gated channel, you remember from biology that the two things that make up a plasma membrane are the proteins embedded within a phospholipid bilayer. And the proteins can be marker proteins and gated channels. And what the gated channel is as it would sound, is it is a gate that when is given the electrical charge, it will open and allow for rapid diffusion, which of course is the movement of a substance from an area of greater concentration to an area of lesser concentration. So it is quite literally at the cellular level opening up the floodgates and letting those ions pour in, which will change the polarity and the charge of the cell and allow for the signal to be passed on down the cell. So that's a brief synopsis into an action potential. Each will be studied in depth in the upcoming chapters. So here is the broad overview of muscle and nerve tissue. All right, so this is skeletal muscle, and we'll talk a little bit more about skeletal muscle. This is the real picture of skeletal muscle tissue under a microscope, and this is a small section of the artistic version of the muscle tissue. And so basically this is one of these right here, and that is a muscle. That is one muscle cell. Muscle cells, similar to nervous cells, are unique not only in their ability to respond to electrical stimuli, but they are very long. So a muscle cell is going to be the full length of the muscle, and your nerve cells also are very long, and that helps them send that electrical signal on down the line. So let's get into some of the differences between the muscle tissues. The first is skeletal muscle tissue. It is called that because it's attached to the skeleton. Its function is to move your body, maintain heat and posture. Its appearance is striated or striped. It has bands. You can see the bands that run across the muscle across there. Multinucleated, which means one cell will contain many nuclei. And the reason is the cells are so long that one nucleus just isn't enough. So they'll have a number of nuclei spread out throughout the full length of the cell. And of course, skeletal muscle is voluntary, which means it is under your conscious control. You decide when to make that muscle do its job, which is to shorten or contract. Cardiac muscle tissue is found only in one place, and that is the heart. It is also striated, but it is branched. You can see how it forks here and here. So it kind of has more of a fibrous look because of the branching, whereas skeletal muscle, all of the fibers run parallel to each other with no branching. Its job is to pump blood continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from before you were born until, unfortunately, the day that you die. It never stops. It is also striated or banded, and it will have one centrally located nucleus. And one of the things that's not mentioned in this graph is if you look at the picture, you can see these dark bands right here, and there's another one right there. Those are called intercalated discs, and they're one of the things that make skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle easy to distinguish between each other. If you see those bands, those dark discs, then you know it's cardiac muscle tissue. And it's also involuntary. Thank goodness we don't have to consciously pump blood through our system. The heart does it all by itself. We do not have to voluntarily contract atria, contract ventricles, contract atria, contract ventricles, because you'd never be able to survive past middle school because you would forget to pump your blood, because middle schoolers forget everything. Smooth muscle is the third kind of muscle tissue, and it is found in the hollow organs and some of the blood vessels. We find it in the GI tract. It'll be in the uterus, the woman's uterus. It is for when she has contractions and she is squeezing a baby out of her body. The smooth muscle cells in her uterus will contract. We find it in the eye to help change the shape of our lens. And we find it in blood vessels to help the heart squeeze the blood along through those hollow tubes. It works by a process called peristalsis, which is a wave of muscle contraction that travels down that hollow tube. It will help with our blood pressure, maintain our blood pressure, the size of our pupils, and it will also cause hair to stand up in our skin. Smooth muscle gets its name because it has no striations, no banding, and it is uninucleated or contains one nucleus, and also is involuntary, not under our conscious control. Here are the pictures to show you the difference. The top one there is skeletal, and all of the fibers are going to be lined up next to each other, and they will all run in the same direction that this muscle fiber is running. Cardiac muscle tissue is below. You can see the striations that run across, but you can also see these heavy bands here and here. Those are the intercalated discs. The branching, again, these open spaces where the muscle cells fork and branch, is another dead giveaway. We're looking at cardiac muscle tissue. And then again, there's smooth over here. And the smooth, you see, has none of the bands or striations. And that's what gives it its name of smooth muscle tissue. All right, so here is the actual picture of skeletal muscle. As you can see, here we see part of one muscle fiber or cell, 2, 3, 4, and a piece of a fifth cell or muscle fiber, all running in the same direction. We see lots of nuclei spread out all over the cell. And of course, the banding, you can see those stripes, banding, or what is referred to as striation. And that is what skeletal muscle tissue will look like under a microscope. This is cardiac muscle tissue. You can see it has more branching and forks here and here. You see there's more spaces. Definitely see the striations, the bands that run across, and these dark discs right there. We know that that there's a nucleus. We know that those are the intercalated discs, and that is what tells us we're looking at at cardiac muscle tissue and not skeletal. And this is smooth muscle. We find it this is a section from one of your arteries. And as you can see, it has one nucleus instead of multiple nuclei, and it has a very smooth appearance because there are no striations, there are no bands, there are no stripes going across the muscle cell. Aging and tissues heal faster in young adults. You see that a child will heal faster, or a teenager will heal faster than an adult or an elderly person. Surgery of a fetus normally will leave no scars. I find that to be an amazing fact, that whenever they do fetal surgery, which means they have to do the surgery on the fetus while it is still inside mom's uterus, which is amazing in itself, but those will leave no scars. I find that to be very noteworthy. Young tissue has a better nutritional state, blood supply, and higher metabolic rate. This is probably why it heals faster, because of the higher metabolic rate and better nutrition. Extracellular components also change with age. So as you get older, you will lose the cartilage in the growth plates, for example, and that will turn to bone. Changes in the body's use of glucose, collagen, and the elastic fibers contribute to the aging process. All right, now I want to come back to this slide, and I want to talk about the identifying parts of the nerve cell. The nerve cell or neuron has a very large main cell body, and you can clearly see the nucleus and all of the organelles that are in there. But I want to talk about how a nerve cell is a one-way electrical conduit. So when a signal is passed from your brain down the spinal cord and out to the periphery nerves, it will take a particular path, and that path is only one way. You have efferent and afferent pathways. The efferent goes to the brain, the afferent goes away. The effector and affector. So what ends up happening is these are called dendrites, and they receive the signal from wherever its source is. So let's say that this dendrite is connected, and the electrical signal will go this way towards the body of the cell, and then that signal, no matter which dendrite receives it, that signal will go to the cell body and then down this long portion of the neuron called the axon. And it will travel that way till it reaches the end. And once it reaches the end or the terminal, then it will either pass that signal on to the next neuron or to whatever the end of the line is. It could be a muscle. Most of the time, a lot of times it's a muscle. It could be the organ, it could be the stomach or the intestines or any number, your eye, it could be any number of things. And then when you have your receptors that sense stimuli, they will take another set of neurons going in the opposite direction. So this neuron will never receive information and send it back to the brain. There's a different neuron that will run back to the brain, and each of the neuron are only one way. They're only going to send the signal in one direction, and it goes from the dendrites all the way down the axon in that direction. All right. Now, that will conclude all the material for the tissues unit. All right, that should wrap things up for all the lecture material on the tissues unit. So if you have any questions, shoot me an email, let me know. If you're on quarantine, then good luck, and hopefully we'll see you back here soon. Talk to you later.